Global markets are still mired in volatility at the end of a week that saw trillions of dollars in losses for investors. In Asia, Japanese shares fell by 2% amid persistent fears that the global economy is on the verge of another recession. European shares have opened slightly higher, while on Wall Street, pre-market trades are pointing up. But the bigger concern for consumers will be the price of oil. The international crude benchmark Brent rose more than 1% following Washington's announcement of new sanctions on Iran's oil sector. Now, earlier in the week, Iranian officials said they would pursue closer ties with Russia as economic restrictions weigh on both countries.
Because of the current situation in Ukraine, Russians also need to cooperate with Iran. The needs of both countries can naturally boost our economic cooperation.
Now, for more on the story, let's go to Danni Hewson, financial analyst at AJ Bell in the UK. Welcome back to the program. Danny, now it's been a terrible week for investors with central banks aggressively raising rates to tame inflation. Can you tell us what the impact that those moves will have on the real economy?
Well, in terms of the real economy, it means less money for people in their pockets because borrowing money is going to cost more. So if they have things like mortgages, if they have any kind of debt, then clearly they are going to have less to spend. You've also got the situation where, money being wiped off the market value of businesses means that potentially they will look to cut costs, which could, of course, lead to some kind of job losses. But clearly, the big reason behind these rate hikes is because of soaring inflation. And central banks just need to try and get to grips with that because that is the thing which is really hurting people.
Right. So you mentioned less money in people's pockets, but we're seeing soaring inflation. So central banks have to deal with that. But what is the way out of this sort of political economic conundrum that we're facing? What do policymakers need to do?
It is a conundrum, isn't it? I mean, when you think about it, the Federal Reserve was talking about trying to create a soft landing, so very gently tightening fiscal policy in order to make sure that they didn't create a recession. But because inflation is so high, they're having to use, instead of a soft mattress, the equivalent of a breeze block in order to try and tame inflation. But, interest rate hikes aren't going to deal with things overnight because of the reason behind a lot of these price rises. They are down to global issues. They're either down to supply issues or they're down to obviously political issues, or of course, because of the situation in Ukraine and those sanctions against Russia. So it's kind of a lot of moving parts that central banks are having to deal with, but they can't not do anything.
All right, Danni Hewson at AJ Bell in the UK. Thank you for joining the show as always.